Welcome back to Water's World. Fake news in the tank news and real news. That's the subject of tonight's Water's Words. Americans are confused, and rightfully so, about the Obama administration allegedly wiretapping Trump Tower because we don't believe what the media tells us anymore. Here's an example why. On January 20th, the New York Times published a headline that read, quote, "Wiretap data used in inquiry of Trump aides." Reporter Michael Schmidt writes that U.S. law enforcement and intelligence agencies are examining intercepted communications as part of an investigation into possible links between Russia and Trump associates, and that the wiretap communications have been provided to the Obama White House. So, the New York Times reports the Obama White House knew there were people wiretapping Trump world? Sounds almost exactly what President Donald Trump tweeted about, right? But after the Trump tweet, on March 4th, here is now the New York Times headline as it appears. Trump offering no evidence, says Obama tapped his phones. The headline was written by the exact same writer, Michael Schmidt. No evidence? People look at the headlines and wonder, is the New York Times not a good enough source? Unbelievable. And how about this hoax? On November 15th, a woman in Michigan reported to police that she was attacked by a man who scratched her in the face. She claimed it was a hate crime following the election of Donald Trump. But it turns out the entire story was fabricated. She scratched her own self in the face. She was depressed and made up the entire story. Now for some in-the-tank news. And just so you know, the next 4, possibly 8 years will be eye-opening because Water's World will be able to perfectly show the media double standard, how it covers the exact same thing differently. Example 1. A Republican congressman, Jason Chaffetz, received a massive negative press when he said this about the new Republican health care bill.
Americans have choices, and they've got to make a choice. And so maybe rather than getting that new iPhone that they just love and they want to go spend hundreds of dollars on that, maybe they should invest it in their own health care.
The congressman received wall-to-wall coverage on cable networks for this so-called insensitive gaffe. But wait a second. I remember another politician saying the exact same thing and receiving zero negative press attention. Roll the tape.
What I would say is if you looked at that person's budget and you looked at their cable bill, their telephone, their cell phone bill, other things that they're spending on, it may turn out that it's just they haven't prioritized health care because right now everybody's healthy. Nobody actually wants to spend money on health insurance.
He said the exact same thing, but when a Republican says it, it's a gaffe. Example 2. Ben Carson said this a few days ago.
That's what America is about. A land of dreams and opportunity. There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less.
Immigrants or slaves? This soundbite was the lead story on many liberal shows. It was called a gaffe, racially charged, and historically inaccurate. But guess who else said the exact same thing?
Certainly it wasn't easy for those of African heritage who had not come here voluntarily, and yet in their own way were immigrants themselves.
So you see, there's a different standard when Democrats say something because the press is in the tank. Now, for the real news this week. Things you may not have heard about much because you've been overwhelmed with fake news and hoaxes. Illegal border crossings down 40% in Trump's first month in office. That's way more than the 10 to 20% Homeland Security usually sees this time of year. Good news, right? And then there's this. Big-time gains for American jobs and wages so far under President Trump. 235,000 jobs were added in the month of February, following 238,000 jobs added in January, the best back-to-back rise since July. President Trump will be judged on his performance in office, so keep these numbers in mind. Speaking of big numbers, remember how department stores were dropping Ivanka Trump's line due to low performance? Well, since then, her clothing sales increased 346%. Does that sound like low performance to you? I don't think so. And here is a story that the mainstream media completely buried. Remember how the IRS was caught targeting the Tea Party under President Obama, and all of a sudden they lost or destroyed mountains of evidence? Well, 2 years later, the IRS curiously located 7,000 documents. But again, not a smidgen of corruption there, right? Of course not. And we still have no timeline for when these documents are going to be released. Ridiculous. So the bottom line is, the media continues to complain that Americans don't trust them anymore. Well, I think these examples I just showed are just the reasons why. So until the media reports fairly, accurately, corrects the record, and stops burying positive news for Donald Trump, trust in the press will continue to erode. But you can always trust Waters' words to tell you the truth.